Materialistic enjoyment stinks. Just analyze that statement a little bit more. Why didn't I say material enjoyment stinks? Well, material enjoyment isn't necessarily bad. Let's give an example. One can be in a pleasant surroundings, nice park with trees and birds chirping and a lake, and be fully Krishna conscious in pleasant surroundings, in an atmosphere which is materially enjoyable. If one can be fully Krishna conscious if one doesn't have an attitude of enjoying it. If one has an attitude that my overwhelming preoccupation is with serving Krishna in happiness or distress, but materialistic enjoyment, that slight addition to the word materialistic, that gives the idea of a desire to enjoy. And then materialistic enjoyment stinks. And we all know what the word stink means. Well, maybe you don't as much as me. I'm just remembering my years in Bangladesh in the mostly late 1970s and 1980s. Often go to festivals which were held in fields with pandal arrangement, and then for the toilets an arrangement is made, just dig a hole in the ground. And not just one, but many holes. But by the end of the first, say 2-3 days, there's no arrangement to remove the excreta which goes in there. So the toilets are an area just full of stools, so much stool. If you have 2,000 people all passing stool in the same area, and it remains there for 2-3 days, you can imagine it stinks, and it really does. So maybe you all have the experience, maybe not so much in the sophisticated Western cities, but quite common in more rural surroundings. A mouse or a small bird dies and is in some crevice or somewhere, and we start to smell it. Even a little mouse, if it dies in a crevice in your room, and then or just in a field, and if you pass by that area just walking, then after 2-3 days the smell just from a little mouse becomes quite a stink. So stink refers to the general meaning is an unpleasant olfactory experience. But because it's such a disgusting experience, then the word stink can also be used to mean something that we feel is absolutely disgusting. So if we really want to insult someone, we can say, "You stink. I feel so bad. You disgust me." So it's also used as a graphic synonym for disgust. So materialistic enjoyment is disgusting. Literally also, now getting back to material enjoyment, the central focus of material enjoyment, as we understand from Srimad Bhagavatam, is sexual enjoyment. And unless you put plenty of perfume, which is usually done, or some incense, or the sex act means that there's some stink. The body's certain fluids come from the body, and the body stinks. And even the most beautiful woman in the world, at least on this planet, not in the heavenly planets, they pass something out their backside every day which stinks. So that body which is the vehicle of enjoyment, of gross sensual enjoyment, the body is full of stinking substances. stool being very stinky, and then so many things: blood, urine, bone marrow if you get inside the body real deep inside, and then the kidney, liver, and all it stinks. Well, especially the blood may not immediately stink, but if it's left for a little time, it starts to stink. It's very unpleasant. So, although materialistic people don't like to hear this because they're committed to material enjoyment, and you just have to forget all this kind of thing, that the material body is actually made of disgusting substances. Understanding this is the beginning of spiritual life. One will not take to genuine spiritual life unless he's disgusted with material enjoyment. Now, it is possible to take to bhakti while having material desires. Not full-fledged bhakti, because full-fledged bhakti, uttama bhakti, is anyabhilashita shunyam, without any desire other than to serve Krishna. But it is possible one can be arta, distressed, and praise to Krishna, and artarti, praise to Krishna for money. So these are materialistic desires, but such desires, unless we overcome them, we don't actually enter into the fully spiritual realm of Krishna consciousness, where we're relating to Krishna. I'm spiritual by nature. I'm a jiva. You, Krishna, are the supreme spiritual personality of Godhead, and I want to serve you on that platform. But on the material platform, we identify with ourselves as this body, and I want to enjoy it, and I want Krishna to facilitate it. So real spiritual life, even in the impersonal line, it begins with disgust about the very prospect of material enjoyment. And if we don't have that, we can go on practicing bhakti, but we don't properly progress. We may not progress at all. Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur gave an example of people going in a boat at night in Bengal, common form of transport, especially previously, especially in the East Bengal, and in the South West Bengal also, Sundarban. That's the main means of transport. You get in a boat, and then so a party of people got in a boat at night. You mostly row at night if you want to go a long distance. It's convenient. You can sleep in the boat, and you escape the heat of the day, and you save time. And the boatman rows. So you get in the boat at dusk, and you expect to wake up at dawn at your destination, or at least a good way along your way. But then, if you get in the boat and you wake up at dawn and find you're in the same place, and what went wrong? The boatman says, well, I was rowing all night, but he forgot to untie the rope which binds the boat is tied to a post which is put in the ground. So however hard you row, you may row very sincerely all night, but you don't go anywhere. So the example is given that if one is attached to sense gratification, then despite all doing everything else right, which is required to move, to progress in devotional service, you won't make any progress. And you might even stay awake and help the boatman and learn yourself how to row very expertly, you know, all the techniques. And you might even learn so well that you can teach others the techniques. But still, unless the boat is released from the rope that ties it to the bank of the river, then you don't go anywhere. So it may be that someone is doing all the techniques of devotional service, but not actually making any progress, because the desire for material enjoyment remains. Now that will remain, that's why we have sadhana bhakti. We have sadhana bhakti is for those of us who have material desires but want to be purified and want to attain to the stage of pure love of Krishna. So it's understood that there will be material desires, but they're supposed to be purified by performing devotional service. And as we become material desires means desires for material enjoyment, and we're supposed to become purified. But then if we don't give up the desire for material enjoyment, then we don't go anywhere if we maintain that desire. This is basic ABC Krishna conscious philosophy. With the boatman, even he's expertly rowing, doing everything, but it's all useless without untying the rope. Without untying the rope of material desires, or the desire to enjoy this material world, then we may be doing all the techniques of devotional service, but what's going to happen is that at some point the material desires are going to arise in our heart, and then we may get diverted from devotional service, or we may just go on doing devotional service, but in a manner that happens. Bahu janma kare jadi shravan kirtan tabuta napai Krishna pade prema dhan. By maintaining material desires, even though we go on with the techniques of devotional service for many lifetimes, we don't attain to this platform of prem. Because prem and karma, they're different. It's a very simple thing to understand. It's maybe the most basic point of Krishna consciousness, of the philosophy concerning the attitude in devotional service, that Atendriya priti vancha tare bale kam, Krishnendriya priti ichha dhare premanam. Desire is there. The desire to satisfy our own senses is the karma, the material desire that binds us in this material world. And prem means when we desire only to satisfy Krishna's transcendental senses. So we can't cultivate both things and expect to attain to the state of prem, even if we do so for many lifetimes. So it's disastrous to our own spiritual life, or really the spiritual life doesn't really happen. The Krishna consciousness, although to all appearances it may seem to happen, and it's the desire for material enjoyment, when it becomes institutionalized in Vaishnava society, it's like a poisonous contamination, and we may not even recognize it. The poison of the desire for material enjoyment just completely destroys everything that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give us. And I saw that in Bangladesh when I was there, because that is a land of culture of Chaitanya. Of course, by chanting the names of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, people are benefited immensely, but because of no one had been properly teaching them, or whatever the reason, I don't know exactly how, but the spirit of enjoyment had entered to such an extent that it was very, very difficult to find anyone, even though in Bangladesh you find so many people, at that time I'm talking about the 1980s, so many people chanting Hare Krishna, worshipping Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but eating fish. It was difficult to find a vegetarian. Now that's not a proper Vaishnava activity. But when we tell them, the people are surprised. What do you mean? We're all Vaishnavas and we're eating fish. And it was a normal thing to see people doing kirtan, apparently with lots of feeling. And I'm sure they had lots of feeling in their heart. But then afterwards, when the kirtan's over, they smoke a bidi. And they think it's all right. In fact, there was there for kirtaniers, there's one kind of bidi seva that you give them bidis after they do their kirtan. Now again, in their heart, they're feeling, they're singing and they're feeling a lot of ecstasy and feelings for Krishna. But they got it wrong. It's not on the spiritual platform, because if they actually had feelings for Krishna, then they wouldn't get into these mundane, grossly mundane activities of sense gratification. Even I remember one devotee told me, I was speaking to him, he's actually an initiated disciple of Jayapataka Maharaj, and I was speaking about this, how there's the fish eating is very bad. He said, what's very bad? I'm from a Vaishnava family. Everyone in our family eats fish, and everyone in our village eats fish, and our guru eats fish. So because the gurus, the leaders themselves, have a spirit of enjoyment, and then they make some comment. Yes, it's okay to eat fish. It's Ganga Phal. It's the fruit of the Ganga. So it's only fruit, you see. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, you got to offer me. And they justified it. And then the whole Vaishnava society, even though there are millions of people doing kirtan and chanting Hare Krishna even before we went to Bangladesh, but no one was becoming a pure devotee because of these severe anarthas, which they didn't even recognize were anarthas. And then I had some insight into why Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was so heavy, so strong against these sahajiyas and the people who are representing devotional service or consider themselves to be devotees, but not properly following the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And thus the whole sampradaya had become very dark, and some of the worst manifestations were in the idea that a sadhu, he has someone who has renounced the world, then he gets into rasa lila with other people's wives. And this is not a joke. But they actually thought, some, not all, of those who were Vaishnavas. I didn't see this actually in Bangladesh. Maybe it was hidden. There were some, but it's not the kind of thing that most people want to advertise. And most people thought it was pretty dirty. But there were some who thought, yeah, this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, we're Vaishnavas, we have tilak. What is that? Nake tilak, golai mala, parer, shonge egg parer bala. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he noted this, that there are some who have tilak on their foreheads, and the kunti mala, tulasi mala on their necks, and on their lap, or with them, is someone else's wife. So these things were going on. At the same time, people are feeling bhakti, but it's not really bhakti. As far as they're concerned, yeah, I'm feeling great bhakti in my heart, but it's namaparad because they're cultivating the desire for material enjoyment. And what happens by chanting namaparad? One gets material enjoyment. You can get it. Maybe that's one reason why so many devotees got born in the West. There were Bengali sahajiyas who were chanting Hare Krishna, and then they got born in the West, and then Prabhupada saved them and gave them the real proper understanding that we have to perform devotional service without sinful activities. He stipulated no meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, and put them on the right path. Now you may say, well, this doesn't apply to our Vaishnava society at the present time, because no one's claiming that they're going to have spiritual activities with other people's wives. Or no, we don't find in the worldwide Vaishnava society. There might be some definitely still in Bengal and Orissa who eat fish and chant Hare Krishna, but we don't find that in the worldwide Vaishnava world. So why am I talking all these things anyway? But well, we do have certain compromises in eating. For instance, so I've heard, there are many devotees who tell others, yeah, you should go with your family from time to time to a good, clean vegetarian restaurant. But that's not what Srila Prabhupada taught us. It's not what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught, Bishayer ona kaile molin hoi mon. If one eats food given by materialistic enjoyers, then one's mind becomes dirty. Dirty means material desires. And there can be a downward spiral. It's the beginning. Once one, it may be that one has been practicing very seriously, but then due to some bad association of devotees telling you, maybe some respected devotees who tell you, yeah, it's good, or you should have sex with your wife just for some enjoyment because, I don't know what the because is, but I have heard that such things are preached within the Vaishnava society, and we can see that things can start to go down, and it's quite common within the worldwide Vaishnava society that devotees, they may be practicing in many ways and be good devotees in many ways, but well, I don't know, because they dress, not necessarily when they come to the temple or come to programs, they may dress in a suitable manner for Vaishnavas at that time. They may dress in things like tight jeans for women and shorts and really the kind of clothing which, shorts for women especially, but even definitely men in a Vaishnav gathering shouldn't be dressed in shorts, but it's sensuous, it's sexual. Or tight T-shirts that show the contours of the chest. It's definitely sensual, and it's not suitable for Vaishnavas. It's addressing in the manner of gross worldly enjoyers. But we see that among devotees. And you may say, well, it's not so bad, but it is pretty bad, and it will degrade further. Otherwise, how did this come in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pure movement? That people are eating fish and smoking bidis and worse. It must have started somewhere, because they weren't following the proper process. And there's always some there's always some justification. Like I said, well, we're wearing tight clothes, and or you can have sex just for enjoyment, and I guess that means with contraceptives. And because someone justifies it, somehow tries to justify it, although there's no justification if we take the teachings of the acharyas, Srila Prabhupada. It's going to destroy the spirit of pure devotion. It does, immediately destroys the spirit of pure devotion. There are so many examples. Therefore, we should cut out the spirit of materialistic enjoyment at the beginning. Otherwise, there cannot be anyabhilashita shunya bhakti. It makes sense. If you're it's just simple logic. If you're cultivating material desires, then you can't have pure devotional service, which is defined as being free from material desires, or even from desires for impersonal liberation. And it's a simple example, which every devotee knows. You can't pour petrol on a fire from one side and water on a fire from the other side and expect a blazing fire. If you do opposite things, then you're going to have a mixed effect at best. If you only pour petrol, then you get a blazing fire. If you want a blazing fire, then you only pour petrol. But if you also pour water, then you're not going to get a blazing fire. You get a lot of smoke. So the same thing. If we cultivate only devotional service, which may be difficult if one's a grihastha in modern life because we're surrounded by materialistic people. But then we have to be more strict, and rather than adjusting ourselves to them, which we have to some extent, but we should be very careful not to become contaminated by the materialistic ideas of enjoyment and then prestige. See, who are these? This kind of thing's been going on for centuries, since Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came. The Shaktas, the worship of Durga and Kali in Bengal would say, look at these Vaishnavas, they're not enjoying the world like we worshippers of Durga. Because the Vaishnava is not interested in that. They had to tolerate the insults of the Shaktas, but they did, and they made spiritual advancement. Or maybe they got influence, and that's how the Sampradaya got degraded. Some verses from toward the end of chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita, which describes lust, karma, material desire, as Mahashano Mahapapa Vidhyena Mehavayunam. Lust, material desire, is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. Avritam jnanam etena jnanino nityavairina kamarupena kauntaya dushpurena nalena cha. Thus the living entity, who should know better, his pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. Tasmat tvam indriyan yadau niyamya bharatarshaba papmanam prajahiyanam jnana vijnana nashanam. Therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. At the very beginning, we have to cut this out from our lives and from our sampradaya. I'm just going to read a little from the beginning of the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 10, text 3. These are, again, what we consider very basic instructions, but they may be very basic, so basic that we neglect them, just like basic safety rules. And we think, well, I've been driving for so many years, I never had an accident, so I don't have to bother attentively keeping my attention on the road. 20 years I've been driving, I never had any accidents, so it's okay, I don't have to bother. And then the accident comes because we don't attend to the basics which we require to attend to from the beginning and all throughout. Okay, here's from the 11th canto of Bhagavatam, just a few translations of a few verses. A purified soul should see, this is Lord Krishna speaking to Uddhava, a purified soul should see that because the conditioned souls who are dedicated to sense gratification have falsely accepted the objects of sense pleasure as truth, all their endeavors are doomed to failure. One who is sleeping may see many objects of sense gratification in a dream, but such pleasurable things are merely creations of the mind and are thus ultimately useless. Similarly, the living entity who is asleep to his spiritual identity also sees many sense objects, but these innumerable objects of temporary gratification are creations of the Lord's illusory potency and have no permanent existence. One who meditates upon them, impelled by the senses, uselessly engages his intelligence. One who has fixed me within his mind as the goal of life should give up activities based on sense gratification and should instead execute work governed by the regulative principles for advancement. Give up activities based on sense gratification. Give up activities based on sense gratification. Simple. Philosophy is clear. We have to practice it in our lives. Now, these are general instructions for all devotees, and I'm speaking to myself it is important. We need to be reminded of these things from time to time, because it's very possible that someone may do very good service for many years, but because the seed of desire for sense gratification isn't uprooted, or maybe comes in contact by social pressure or whatever, that you should do a little sense gratification, something, and then a clear vision of what we're doing in Krishna consciousness becomes spoiled, and we can become infected by desires for material enjoyment. So we can't understand things clearly, and we can get infected by all kinds of mayavad and so many weird things. It all comes from the desires for material enjoyment. So materialistic enjoyment stinks. That we should know. Please consider these verses very carefully, the import of them. Go back, read them again. You've read them many times in Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. Go back, read it again, and think how it applies in your life. Please. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha. Kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.